Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe and turn on notification. Leo Vance woke. The smell of burning toast. It was a bitter, acrid scent. A smell that clawed its way up the stairs. And into his Sunday morning dream. He sat up, the sheets pooling around his waist. It was 8:15. He jumped out of bed, pulling on a worn robe, and hurried downstairs. His bare feet were cold on the hardwood floors. In the kitchen, a haze of gray smoke hung in the air. His wife, Thea, stood by the toaster, trying to pry out two blackened squares with a butter knife. Their 5-year-old son, Noah, watched from his booster seat. His eyes wide. His small hands clutching a toy dinosaur. "Thea, for God's sake," Leo said, his voice rough with sleep. He moved past her, unplugged the appliance, and carried it to the open back door, shaking the charred remains onto the porch. He opened a window. The cool March air rushed in. He turned and looked at his wife. Thea was 32. An artist with a camera. Someone who could make a bowl of fruit look like a Dutch masterpiece. She had wavy, dark hair that always looked effortlessly perfect. And eyes the color of moss after a rainstorm. Those eyes were wet now. And he knew. Instantly. It wasn't from the smoke. It was something deeper. Something he had been sensing for months, but refused to name. He walked over and kissed her forehead. A gesture he'd performed 1,000 times. Today, it felt like a formality. "I'll make breakfast," he said, his smile tight. "It's my day off." His only day off. 6 days a week. From noon until well after midnight. Leo was the executive chef at Solstice. A restaurant he had built from nothing. His life was a whirlwind of inventory sheets, searing scallops, and controlled chaos. He'd met Thea when she was just 25, hired to photograph a menu. He was 28, his hands perpetually smelling of garlic and thyme. His ambition, a fire in his belly. She was different. She spoke of light and composition, of capturing a moment's soul. He'd felt, from the very beginning, a quiet insecurity, a sense that he was the brute craftsman, to her ethereal artist. He believed he had built them a perfect life. The restaurant, the house, their son Noah. But he had built it, with brick and mortar. She seemed to exist in a world of light and shadow. A world he couldn't quite enter. He made perfect French toast in 15 minutes. Noah ate with noisy enthusiasm, oblivious to the silence stretching between his parents. Thea barely touched hers. She just pushed the syrupy bread around her plate with a fork. Her gaze lost somewhere beyond the garden window. Later, after the dishes were washed and Noah was watching cartoons, she spoke. She sat across from him at the kitchen table. Her hands folded neatly. Her voice was calm, measured, as if she were reciting from a script. "Leo, I think we need some time apart." And he felt a cold knot form in his stomach. His face remained impassive. "I love you, and I love Noah," she continued, her eyes not quite meeting his. "But I feel like we're just roommates. You're at the restaurant 60, sometimes 70 hours a week. When you come home, you're exhausted. Our conversations are about bills. And Noah's school. The connection is gone." She paused, taking a breath. "I've been reading about it. Sometimes, a temporary separation. It can be healthy. It gives you space to miss each other. To remember why you fell in love. To reignite the flame." "Time apart," he repeated, the words tasted like ash. "What does that mean?" 3 weeks, she said. The number was too precise. Too clean. "I'll stay with my friend, Sarah. It's not about seeing other people. It's about finding ourselves again. So we can be better together." He listened. His hands were clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. He wanted to argue. To scream, that you don't fix a broken house by one person moving out. But he saw a resolve in her eyes he hadn't seen before. She wasn't asking. She was informing. He had already lost this argument. Before it even began. "Fine," Leo said, his voice flat. 3 weeks. The following Monday felt surreal. Thea packed. Leo watched her from the doorway of their bedroom. She folded clothes with a strange, focused energy. Not sweatpants and old t-shirts. She was packing her best dresses, silk blouses, 2 pairs of expensive heels. She packed them into 2 large, hard-shell suitcases. That's a lot. For 3 weeks at Sarah's, he commented. He tried to keep his tone light, but a sharp edge of suspicion was already in his voice. You never know, she said, not looking up. Sarah might want to go out. A gallery opening, maybe. I want to have options. Her answer was too smooth. Too prepared. It was a line. Not a reason. He felt a cold distance opening between them. He was no longer her husband. He was an audience member. Watching her perform. He helped her carry the suitcases downstairs. They felt heavy. Solid. Like they contained more than just clothes. Like they held the weight of a different life. One he was not a part of. She knelt to hug Noah. I'll be back before you know it, sweetie, she cooed, her voice dripping with a tenderness that felt utterly false to Leo. It's just a short trip, for work. Another lie. To him, it was for their marriage. To their son, it was for work. Her goodbye was a quick, papery kiss on his cheek. He didn't hug her back. He watched her drive away, down the tree-lined street, until the car vanished. He stood on the porch for a long time. There was no sadness. Not yet. There was only a cold, buzzing certainty in his gut. The timeline, exactly 3 weeks. The luggage. Excessive. The rehearsed excuses. It all clicked into place. Not as a plan to save their marriage, but as a meticulously arranged escape. That night, after he tucked Noah into bed, the house was oppressively silent. The silence mocked him. He didn't pour a whiskey. He went to his office. He pulled out an old business card he had kept from his brother's messy divorce. Milo Kozlov. Private investigator. Discreet. Efficient. Expensive. Leo's hands were steady as he dialed the number. A gruff voice answered. Kozlov. My name is Leo Vance, he said, his voice low and even. I need your services. My wife has just left for what she claims is a 3-week stay with a friend. I have reason to believe that is not the truth. He explained the situation with clinical detachment. He gave Milo her name, her car's license plate, the address of her supposed destination. There was a pause. I can start tomorrow, Milo said. My retainer is $2,000. I'll transfer it now, Leo replied. He hung up, his hands slick with sweat. He felt a pang of something. Maybe guilt. But it was quickly consumed by a cold, righteous anger. He wasn't a paranoid husband. He was a man who refused to be played for a fool. This was no longer about saving his marriage. This was about uncovering the truth. The first few days were a masterclass in deception. His, and hers. By day, Leo was the picture of a devoted father. At the restaurant, he was the focused, demanding chef. He channeled his simmering rage into his work, creating dishes with a ferocious precision. But at night, after Noah was asleep, Leo became a hunter. He sat in the dark, checking his email every 10 minutes, waiting. They exchanged a few texts. Her. Hope everything is okay. Sarah says hi. Him. Everything's fine. Noah misses you. Lies. All of it. The first report arrived on Wednesday evening. A password-protected PDF. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs as he opened it. The report was concise. Factual. And utterly devastating. Milo confirmed Thea had never gone to Sarah's house. In fact, Sarah and her family were on a cruise. In the Caribbean, Thea had driven 2 hours north, to a small, picturesque town, and checked into a boutique inn called Artisan's Hollow. The name felt like a slap in the face. A retreat for artists. Surrounded by gardens. And she was not there alone. She had enrolled in a 3-week, intensive landscape photography workshop, led by a man named Stéphane Dubois. Leo knew the name. Of course he knew the name. Thea had spoken of him for years, her voice filled with a kind of reverent admiration. An internationally renowned photographer. Charismatic. A master of his craft. The jealousy that had been a low hum in the background of their marriage now roared to life. It was a sickening, corrosive feeling. He had worked his fingers to the bone to give her a life where she could pursue her passion, only for her to use it as a cover to lie to him. The second report came on Saturday, attached with a folder of images. Leo poured himself a large bourbon before he clicked it open. He needed it. The photos made the bourbon turn to acid in his stomach. They were taken with a long lens camera. Grainy, but clear enough. The first photo. Thea and Stefan walking on a trail, their shoulders brushing. An easy, familiar contact. The second, them at dinner, sharing a bottle of wine, their heads tilted towards each other in deep conversation. The third, taken at dusk. Stefan, holding her hand, pointing towards the horizon. But it was her face that broke him. She was smiling. Not the tired, polite smile she gave him anymore. It was a wide, genuine, radiant smile. The smile he had fallen in love with. And she was giving it to another man. The report included a brief background check on Stefan Dubois. Age 42. Married for 10 years. 2 young children. Leo stared at the screen, the images burning into his mind. He was looking at the life his wife would rather be living, with the man she would rather be with. The pain was sharp, physical. But beneath it, his resolve hardened into something cold and unbreakable. The second week was a descent into a cold, calculated fury. Leo moved through his days like an automaton, his mind constantly replaying the images, analyzing every detail. He recalled conversations from months past, her late nights on the laptop, client work, she'd said, the sudden weekend photography trips, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of Stefan Dubois. He had seen all the signs, and he had dismissed them. Passion for her profession, he'd thought. Now he saw the passion was for someone else. The third report arrived on Tuesday of the second week. It was titled, Confirmation. Leo opened it with a sense of grim finality. The photos in this report left nothing to the imagination. A picture of Thea and Stefan kissing in the parking lot, deeply, passionately. A time-stamped photo of Thea leaving Stefan's room at 6 in the morning. Another of Stefan opening his door for her late at night, a bottle of champagne in his hand. But the most damning piece of information was not in a photo. Milo had discovered it. Thea had paid her deposit for the workshop 4 months ago. 4 months. The number echoed in his head. This wasn't a mistake. A moment of weakness. This was a premeditated betrayal. An elaborate, meticulously crafted lie. All for a guilt-free holiday with her lover. With her husband at home, taking care of their child. The pain was gone now, replaced by an ice-cold clarity. He finally understood. He wasn't fighting for his marriage anymore. He was preparing for war. That night, he began to organize the evidence. He created a file, arranging every photo, every detail, in chronological order. He was building a case, piece by damning piece. He called his lawyer. He arranged for Noah to spend the upcoming weekend with his parents. He told them he and Thea needed time to reconnect. The irony was bitter, but necessary. He was in control now. She had written the script for the past 4 months. But he would write the final scene. The final report from Milo arrived on Saturday, 1 day before her return. It was a comprehensive summary. Milo had interviewed staff at the inn. They assumed Thea and Stefan were a married couple, remarking on how in love they seemed. Leo paid Milo's final invoice. Then he sat at his kitchen table. He printed out every photo, every report, and slid them into a large manila envelope. He felt a profound, aching emptiness. And he cried then. For the first time. Not for the loss of his wife, but for the humiliation. She had made him the caretaker. The fool. When the tears stopped, there was nothing left but a quiet, unshakable resolve. Sunday afternoon. A text from Thea. On my way back. Should be there around 6. Can't wait to see you. The hypocrisy of it made him want to smash the phone. Instead, he replied with a single word. Waiting. End of. He spent the afternoon preparing, setting his stage. The manila envelope sat on the coffee table. A cup of cold coffee beside it. He sat in his armchair, the one where he used to read stories to Noah, and he waited. At 6:15, her car pulled into the driveway. The front door opened. Thea walked in, carrying only a small overnight bag. She looked radiant, sun-kissed, her eyes bright, a wide, relaxed smile on her lips. She looked younger, happier. Leo, she said, her voice warm, her arms open for a hug. He didn't move. He stayed seated, his face a blank mask. Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. She sat on the sofa opposite him. This time apart was the best thing for us, she began. The performance he knew was coming. It gave me so much time to think. About us. About what I want. I missed you and Noah so much, it hurt. Every day made me realize how much I value this family. She talked about her fictional stay with Sarah. Long walks. Deep conversations. She concluded, her voice filled with manufactured sincerity, I'm ready to come back, and really invest in us. To be a better wife, more present. More connected. He listened to the entire monologue without interruption. When the silence fell, he didn't speak. He simply picked up the manila envelope and handed it to her. She looked at it, confused. What's this? Open it, he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of the last 3 weeks. With hesitant fingers, she unclasped the envelope. The first thing to slide out was an 8 by 10 glossy photo. The picture of her and Stefan kissing in the parking lot. The color drained from her face. The radiant woman vanished, replaced by a pale, cornered stranger. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the other photos. Leaving his room at dawn. Holding his hand at dinner. Walking arm in arm. When she had seen them all, she looked up at him. Her mouth opened and closed silently. He just watched her. Waiting. You spied on me, she finally whispered, her voice trembling with outrage. You had no right. This is an invasion of my privacy. You violated something far more sacred, Leo replied calmly. Her strategy shifted. She became defensive. It doesn't matter. We were on a break. Technically separated. This was part of my journey. Finding myself. You're right, Leo said. His calm agreement seemed to throw her off balance. The time apart did allow us to make our own choices. And I made mine. He reached back into the envelope and pulled out a sheaf of papers she hadn't noticed. He placed them on the table. Divorce papers. Filled out. And already signed. By him. She snatched them up. A choked sob escaped her lips. The papers fell from her shaking hands. No, she cried, the tears finally coming. Leo, you can't. I love you. Stefan meant nothing. It was just a fantasy. A mistake. Fantasies aren't planned 4 months in advance, Thea, he said, his voice cold as a shard of glass. Mistakes don't last for 3 weeks. And love doesn't involve a web of calculated lies. She scrambled over to him, kneeling, grabbing his hands. We can fix this. Therapy. I'll never see him again, I swear. He gently pulled his hands from her grasp. Trust is built over years, he said softly. You destroyed it in 3 weeks. I can't spend the rest of my life wondering. She stood up unsteadily. She fumbled for her phone and dialed. She put it on speaker. Her hands were shaking too much. After a few rings, a man's voice. Smooth. Impatient. Hello? It was Stefan. Stefan, it's me, Thea said, her voice a frantic rush. He knows. Leo knows everything. He has pictures. He's divorcing me. A long silence. When Stefan finally spoke, his voice was devoid of any warmth. The voice of a man doing damage control. Listen, Thea, he said coolly. I'm very sorry to hear that. But I can't get involved. The workshop is over. I'm back home with my wife and kids. What we had, it was for those 3 weeks. An experience. Nothing more. He paused. I wish you the best of luck. And then he hung up. Thea stared at the silent phone. Her expression. Utterly shattered. Her fantasy, clinically executed. Leo reached into the envelope one last time. He was lying, by the way, he said. About it just being about the experience. He slid one final photo across the table. It showed Stefan Dubois in the garden, minutes before he checked out. He was passionately kissing another woman. A young, blonde participant from the same workshop. Milo looked into it, Leo explained, his voice devoid of emotion. It's his pattern. A new workshop, a new woman. He looked directly at her. You weren't special, Thea, you were just next. That was what finally broke her. She collapsed onto the sofa. Her crying turning into deep, ragged sobs of utter humiliation. The illusion she had sacrificed her entire life for, was not only fake. It was cheap, and generic. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. The evidence was overwhelming. Leo got primary custody of Noah. She got the house. It was a swift, brutal end. 6 months after the divorce, Leo was in his kitchen. At solstice. On a Saturday night, the restaurant was humming. Noah was asleep upstairs. As he plated a perfectly seared piece of halibut, Leo felt a sense of quiet. It wasn't happiness. Not yet. It was peace. The calm harbor after a violent storm. Thea, he heard, was not doing well. Alone in the big house that now felt like a mausoleum. Her business had dried up. Gossip travels fast. He imagined her, haunted by the shame of being so easily discarded. He told himself the feeling he felt was pity. But if he was being honest, it was closer to a grim sense of victory. A year after the divorce, Leo met someone. Her name was Kate, a wine supplier. It started with conversations about pairings. It turned into coffee. Then dinner. She was 34. Divorced. With a laugh that was genuine and warm, he took it slow, building something new on a foundation of absolute honesty. He was learning to trust again, not with blind faith, but with the careful, observant trust of a man who knew its true value. He never spoke of the details. When people asked, he just said, "We grew apart." There was no need to humiliate her further. The truth was his own. Noah adapted. He loved his new life with his father. When he was old enough, Leo knew he would have to explain. He would tell him that sometimes the people you love make terrible choices. But that doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you learn to place your trust more wisely. 3 weeks, 21 days, 504 hours. The time Thea had requested to live a lie, and the exact time Leo had used to uncover the truth. In the end, they had both found what they were looking for. She had found the fleeting thrill she craved. And he had found the ugly reality hiding beneath the surface of his perfect life. That, perhaps, was the cruelest and most just lesson of all. Time doesn't lie. People do. And when the lies are stripped away, time is always the final judge. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.